Welcome back, my friends, to another Space Smuggler update video. I've made a lot of progress since the last video, probably about a week ago, I think. And I have so much stuff to share. First, right off the bat, as I'm sure you can see, here we are in the Godot editor, and looks a little different compared to last time. I have completely overhauled all of the programmer art, all new art, except for buildings, I guess. But we have ships, we have mountains, we have forests. Much better than the green squiggles that we had before. So I'll play this in a second, but just gonna talk a little bit about kind of the updates first, and then we can see them in action. So you can see the graphics here. Another thing related to that I've done is I've taken this background and split it into multiple pieces. So before it was just a single background. Now I have multiple different layers, and you can see I can turn off the mountains, I can turn off the forest, and there's the ground, all as separate layers, and that makes this a little more flexible for me to draw on. And when it comes to creating graphics, I don't have to create nearly as many to account for all the transitions between different terrain types and things. So I've done quite a bit with that. I've done a lot of just general resource cleanup, nothing I'm going to get too much into. Just reorganizing how I have my files laid out, where my tile sets are, things like that. You can see we've got a couple different spawners here. I had spawners in my previous video, and if I turn on, let's pick an interesting one here. Let's pick this guy. I had this show path and editor option, and you can see as before, we can see the ship. Here's a new ship type, so you can see we can have multiple different kinds of enemies now. And just like before, it'll show me the path that these enemies will follow. I have a bunch of stuff down here that I can configure, what kinds of enemies it spawns, how many, etc. Talked about that last time. But now we also have this yellow line that it draws, and if I move this guy around, you can see that yellow line goes with him. And what this line is you can see here, this kind of blue outline is the viewport. And so as we play the level, this viewport will move up the field, and this is the camera, basically. And one of the improvements I've made is that an enemy spawner, previously we had the enemy spawner and it was just attached to the camera, and it was positioned such that enemies would kind of spawn a little bit up here off screen, and then they would come down into the field of view. Well, now these spawners are not part of the camera anymore. They are actually on the background. And what this lets them do is now there's an option in here for stick to viewport. And I can kind of show this off if I let me create a couple enemies here, and I'll place them on screen. So the first thing, let me turn this off and turn it on for these. So the first thing that will happen is the spawner won't start spawning enemies until the viewport hits this line. And I can configure where this line is right here. So if I put this at, let's say, put it right there. So these guys won't spawn right away, or they won't be already existing when the level starts, but the camera will move a little bit. And let me turn off all these other things. There. So this one on the left, I will set to stick to viewport, and this one on the right, I'll turn that option off, and we're going to set these guys to have 0 speed. So when they spawn, they won't move. And so you can see if we hit play here, the camera will start moving. These enemies spawn in. This guy is sticking with us, but this guy is still moving, even though we said he has 0 speed. And that's because he is not attached to the camera. he is actually... this guy, after he spawned, stayed attached to the camera. This guy stayed attached to the background. And you can see if I do it again, he sits where he was, but because the camera is moving forward, he's getting closer to us. So that is an option, and that lets me do all kinds of things where if enemies are spawning in, I can make sure that they're not zipping through the screen too fast. Or if there's a particular pattern I want them to play out on screen, I can make sure that they can play that out before they go off screen. And it makes it easier to design actual levels. Some more improvements here that I've made to the enemy spawner is this enemy rotation control. If I... let's get rid of this guy. And we'll mess with this guy. And so if I say, let's go ahead and give him a little bit of speed again. And if we start the game, you can see he spawns and he's moving down. Or I can rotate him. Let's rotate him -90. And hey, now he's facing to the right. And this will let me have things like where enemies come down the side of the screen and are shooting sideways at you and things like that. I have another control here which is on right now, but it doesn't really affect this path. So if I change the path this guy's going to follow, let's do that one. So now this guy has this kind of wobbly path, right? I spawn in, and you can see I have this enemy rotation follows path off. He kind of wiggles back and forth as he moves down the screen. If I turn this on, though, you can see instead he actually rotates with the path. And this enemy type is not particularly interesting like that, but if we put enemy type 2 on here, wait, there is a slight bug where sometimes it shows the wrong enemy, but if I reopen the level, it fixes it. There we go. So you can see here, this little guy spawns in and wiggles with the path. And it's just another interesting way that I can have enemies move around. This could be something where if I want them to come in and move in like a circular shape, they can spawn in. And in the one scenario, if I leave this guy, if I leave this option turned off, I can have them facing down and they can swoop down and they'll always be facing down. If I turn this option on, they'll swoop down and maybe they'll always face towards the center of the screen. So different ways to control that. And then this activate offset I kind of showed is where the viewport has to hit this line before they'll spawn, and so that's configurable here as well. All right, I think that's about it with the enemy spawners. Let's see, I showed the stick to viewport, I showed the rotation control. Just looking at my notes here. Oh, another change that I made, which I haven't done anything yet, is that the camera speed is now configurable. So let me go ahead and get rid of this guy, and we'll turn all these back on. So you can see I have a little bit of a level set up here. Very kind of basic, but these different ships spawn in, and we've got these guys wiggling down the side. We've got this thing here, and you can really start to see all of this kind of coming together. But maybe that was a little too slow. Maybe I want a bit of a faster paced game. We can select the camera, and we'll say the camera speed is 0.7. And now we're moving a little bit faster. Let's really crank it up and make it very obvious. There we go. Much faster. Or maybe we come to a spot, maybe we're sliding up and we come to a boss and we want to make the camera stop. One of the things I don't quite have yet that I want to put in the next update will be having triggers that as the camera moves up, maybe it hits a trigger that changes the camera speed or plays a visual effect or something like that. That will be hopefully in the next update, but I don't have that yet. But by making this configurable, I'm allowing for that. So we can set the camera speed to 0, for instance, and now the camera doesn't move. And so we can control the play field that way. Let's reset that. Let's see. I talked about graphics. I talked about I did some general life cycle improvements, controlling when things get destroyed after they go off screen, optimizing memory usage, things like that. Nothing too flashy to show off, but important nonetheless. Enemy spawner enhancements. Oh, and I think there's 2 other notable things. One is this. We've had this terrain object, this building, before. But before, I had two different types of enemies, right? I had terrain objects and enemy objects. What I realized, and the difference between them, was that terrain objects followed the terrain, where enemy objects followed the camera. Well, since spawners now have this option to control whether they stick to the terrain or the camera, I realized there was no difference between them anymore. So this is not a special thing. This is now an enemy just like these guys are. These are actually spawners, and so they have all this extra control, whereas this is just an enemy placed in the level. But functionally, these guys all work the same way now. And then the last thing I have to show off is with these backgrounds. And this isn't something I showed off in the previous episode, so it'll be a little hard to tell. But one of the things... Ooh, that doesn't look good. I don't know what all that is. I'll have to look into that. One of the things here was that before each of the different tiles I had, which was 2, I guess, the forest and the path, I had to draw them in everywhere. Well, now you can see I have a couple different tiles here. Some corners, we got a little detailing, a little shading going on. And it's set up so that is handled automatically. You can see here's my tile set. And we have kind of some different configurations of trees. And I went in and added support so that as I draw, it will automatically use the correct versions of the tiles, depending on whatever shape. And so that'll just go into me being able to build out levels that much quicker. So I think that's it for this update. A little bit longer than the last one, a little bit shorter than the first one, I think. Yeah. So next time I'm hoping to have, like I said, those triggers for being able to control the level as we go, as well as the more of some kind of first demo level. Another thing high on my list is we have these enemies, but they still don't shoot at us. They still can't hurt us in any way. So that'll be another thing that's high on my list to do next. So, all right. Yeah, I think that's everything. If you have any questions or thoughts, or if there's anything specific you'd like to see, let me know in the comments. Constructive and critical feedback is always welcome. If you enjoyed this video, do me a favor, hit that like button. It's the best way to support me, this channel, our journey for creativity. If you didn't like this video, that's okay. Hit the dislike button and please leave a comment. Tell me what you didn't like. Tell me what I can improve on. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Thanks everyone for watching, and I'll see you next time.